The college football award season has come and gone, mostly, and we have a list of winners, mostly. The question is not, were all of them deserving? I think, yes, all of them were in their own ways. The real question, as it relates to the NFL draft, is how much do these awards actually matter? What is the hit rate in the league among those award winners, and are they predictive of NFL success? We have the data, and we're going to share that data with you. Every major award and every award winner going back a decade, how many of them worked out at the next level, and what are the chances that this year's crop of award winners flourish in the league? All of that and more on today's Bootleg Football podcast. But before we get going, EJ, my wonderful co-host, how are you?
I'm psyched. We get a really cool chance to talk about all these college awards. I got some pings in my mentions asking what we thought of them and what our reactions were to all these choices. And I feel like most draft content, I'm of two minds about it. There's certainly the college side of it and there's the pro side of it. And where we really fit in is the mesh between the two. So it's a great chance for us to talk about these players and the fact that they were chosen for these very prestigious awards and whether or not that matters in the NFL. That's the real crux of it. And I'm excited to dig into it. We get to look back and sort of say, how's the track record been? And it's changed over time. And the good news is, long story short, it's gotten better.
We have 10 awards we're going to focus on today. These are not all of the college awards, obviously, but these are the 10 kind of main ones that we're really going to be honing in on. We're starting off with the Jim Thorpe Award for Outstanding Defensive Back, then the Dick Butkus Award for Outstanding Linebacker, the Bednarik Award for Defensive Player of the Year, the Rimington for Outstanding Center, the Outland for Outstanding Interior Lineman, offensive or defensive, which, by the way, when it says interior lineman, it's kind of using outdated terminology from when the award started, so that really just means anything inside the tight end. They consider that interior line, so tackles and edges count. The John Mackey Award for Outstanding Tight End, the Bolitnikoff for Wide Receiver, Doak Walker for Running Back, Davey O'Brien, that's the National Quarterback Award, and of course, the Heisman Trophy. So 10 awards with 10 years worth of data that we're going to go over today. But before we get started on that, I do want to thank Underdog Fantasy for making today's show possible, and every show that we've had this season, every show that we will be doing this draft season. Obviously, this is kind of the weird part of the year where we're covering current NFL and, playoff chances and playoff matchups as well as draft season at the same time. Either way, Underdog's going to be with us all the way through the end of April, through this draft season journey that we're now beginning. And if you happen to be doing pick'ems, either towards the end of the regular season or during the NFL playoffs or during NBA season, all the way through June, or baseball, or whatever you happen to be doing, any sports you watch. If you play pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy using promo code BOOTLEG, you'll get up to $1,000 in deposit bonuses. You can find that at the link in the description below, or of course at the QR code on the screen. And if you happen to sign up this week, there's always going to be new depositor specials pretty much every single day, but depending on what day you see this, if you sign up on either Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to get Joe Burrow as your new customer free pick. We're going to be talking about him a lot today. Steph Curry is for Friday and Saturday, and Baker Mayfield, who we're also going to talk about today as a past award winner, is your Sunday new customer free pick. So thank you once again to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's show and every show. And with that, EJ, let's get to our first award, the Jim Thorpe Award for Outstanding Defensive Back. Might be the one award that Travis Hunter somehow didn't win this cycle, but it went to a very, very, very good player, Jahdae Barron, DB extraordinaire out of Texas. He's a corner, he's a nickel, he's a safety, he's whatever you want him to be. And when I first dug into Barron, because I was actually kind of surprised that Hunter didn't win it because he's Travis Hunter and he's a corner. So I was like, oh, wow, somebody else won the Jim Thorpe. Let me watch this kid. Holy shit was my first impression. This is a really, really good player. I don't exactly know what he's going to be in the NFL. Not because, sometimes people use that as a slight of like, oh, he's a good college player. He's not going to be a good NFL player. I don't know what he's going to be in the NFL because he can play anything. Like he's kind of like one of these Jalen Petre, Brian Branch types where he could play outside on some snaps. He could play inside. He could play safety. Like literally whatever you want him to do, he can do. He's an exceptional football player. And going back through 10 years of data for Jim Thorpe Award winners, it's kind of hit or miss whether or not they actually work out in the NFL. Jahdae Barron from Texas, I think, is going to be one of these guys that hits because, my God, he's good.
It's one of the fun themes of this episode is it feels like college football and pro football 10 years ago were further apart. They were coming together, but the distance between the two games was greater in some ways. And I think one of the ways that worked out in college was you did have these players. You had, Saban made the star position famous at Alabama, and everybody didn't really know what to do with stars for a while. Are they nickels? Are they safeties? Everybody was really up in arms about that. And one of the cool things about a lot of these awards, but specifically this one, is the NFL and college have come closer together on this. When it says defensive back, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Used to bug me. Well, defensive back, what? He's got to be a thing, right? Well, he's all things. And the NFL's a lot more comfortable with that. Even last year when we were at Shrine Bowl and we were talking to a corner from Florida State, and he was like, we said, do you consider yourself a corner or safety? He said, look, man, nobody wants safeties out there. They want 4 corners and a safety. I can play either. I can play whatever they want me to do. I can play close to the line. I can play inside. I can play outside. And he was right. And that's what the NFL is looking for. And Jahdae Barron is that. He is versatile. He is tough. He is experienced in multiple spots. And we've seen these guys succeed. Tyke Smith was a guy like that last year. Everybody was like, well, says he's a safety, but most of his snaps are slot. And how do we, doesn't matter. Really good defensive football player. Jahdae Barron's the same thing. Overall, in terms of how the Jim Thorpe Award translates to NFL success, I'm with you. As you go back 10 years, it's interesting. As we look at these awards, we're really going to focus on the last 5 years, but as we stretch into 10 years, you start to see that difference where the NFL and college were further apart in a lot of ways. And I feel like Jim Thorpe is one of the least predictive. We're going to get some of these awards where everybody on the list hits. And hey, if you can pick from anybody in college football, yeah, you're probably going to pick a guy that's going to hit in the NFL, but not always. And before the NFL sort of adjusted its ideas about defensive backs, I feel like many of the picks from, 5 to 10 years ago were less predictive than some of the more recent ones. And I also feel like this is one of the most college-focused awards. Feels like the college awards have started to shift towards, yes, what works at the next level. I know that's not what voters are told, but it's definitely in the back of their heads. Jim Thorpe, even last year it was Trey Taylor. Trey Taylor, very good athlete, very good player. It hasn't necessarily translated yet to the NFL. It's too early to judge whether or not that's a great pick or not, but just him winning this award, him being the top defensive back in the country, is still sort of indicative of Jim Thorpe being a little more college focused and a little less predictive of NFL success. There's nothing wrong with that. Jim Thorpe Award voters never came out and said, we're trying to pick the best NFL defensive back. They're giving out the award for what they think is the best college defensive back. But Jahdae Barron, I think, is both, is a very deserving winner and has a very bright future in the NFL.
And if you go back and you look at this chart of all the winners, like this is the only college award where it's like regularly populated with guys who go in the 7th round, right? Like Gerard Holloman's 7th round pick, Trey Taylor 7th round pick, Trey Tomlinson 6th round pick. Although at the time we were like, I don't know, Trey Tomlinson should have gone before the 6th, but either way, like he went in the 6th. Kobe Bryant was a 4th rounder, ended up converting from corner to safety and has, excelled in that role. But again, we're talking about a day 3 pick. Trayvon Merrick, he was a mid-second rounder. Delpit, a mid-second rounder. There was only a 3-year stretch in like the late 2010s with Adoree Jackson, Minka, and DeAndre Baker of Jim Thorpe Award winners who actually were first-round picks. And if we're talking about ones that lived up to the hype, it was basically just Minka. Like in the last 10 years, it's literally just Minka. So it's not a huge correlation because I feel like voters on broadcast, you don't really get to see DB play. So it's like, okay, who gets the most picks on like the best college team? and they tend to get it. But Jahdae Barron, I feel like might be another Minka type where it's like, oh yeah, he's great in college and he's great in the pros. Next award here, the Butkus Award for Outstanding Linebacker. This one, a lot more correlation, especially if you stretch it out to 10 years. Eric Kendricks, won this award once upon a time. He's had a very long, fruitful career. Jalen Smith, I think if he didn't get injured, his career probably could have gone in a different direction. But either way, the fact that he came back and was a starter is a testament to how good he was. Reuben Foster is one of the ultimate, what could have been in recent NFL history. Roquan, multi-all-pro. Devin White, role player, starter in the NFL. Isaiah Simmons, vastly misused, could have been better, but still, starter in the league. JOK, only went in the second round because of medicals, but man, he's really good. And even Nakobe Dean has come on recently in Philly. Still kind of too early to tell for the last three winners, but were it not for an injury to Jalen Smith and Reuben Foster having a whole whale of issues that were, well, I'm not even going to get into Reuben Foster, but let's just say he was really talented. But were it not for those two things, this one actually would have been fairly predictive.
Yeah, and right down the list for the most part. I mean, you can go back and forth about Devin White, and I'm sure people will in the comments. Simmons, I think we can all agree, probably would have had a much better career if initial landing spot had been better in Arizona and they'd had a better usage plan. We're going to see this throughout, again, this entire list of all these awards, that landing spot matters. We say it every year in draft season, and I think every year we crank it up just a little bit. Maybe 5 years ago, we were like, it's 15 or 20%. And then we're like, no, it's like 30 or 40%. And now, especially with players like quarterback, we'll talk about it a lot when we get to the Davey O'Brien situation, is everything. And we have some really good illustrations of that we'll talk about. But Simmons fits in that category here. Very, very talented player. I feel like he could have had a better pro career if he had a more solid start. But just going down the list, Peyton Wilson, Jack Campbell, Nakobe Dean, JOK, Simmons, that's the last 5 years. Peyton Wilson's already shown some really nice flashes playing for the Steelers this year. Jack Campbell has come around and is a very solid presence in the middle for the Detroit Lions. I feel like inside linebacker, which is most of these guys, takes a little bit longer too. It's one of those roles, a little bit like tight end on offense, that everybody's like, rookie tight ends for the most part don't go off. Well, we've blown that out of the water in the last couple of years, but for a long time, that was the historical trend, is year two was better than year one. And I think it's the same for inside linebackers. And we're seeing that, like you said, Nakobe Dean struggled with some injuries. He's come on this year. Vic Fangio's come in, obviously fits that system, and he's playing very, very well for them. This year's winner, Jalen Walker, whoo boy. That guy's got some game-changing ability. He's got tremendous speed. One of the things that stands out to me early on in watching his tape is how good his feet are. And that's a weird thing to say. We talk about that with wide receivers. We talk about that with running backs a ton. We don't often talk about it with inside linebackers. But when you watch him move on tape, he seems like he's moving faster than everybody else. Seems like somebody went in and sped his tape up.
Because he is.
Yeah, and left the rest of the folks at a regular speed. And the second thing is he's got great feet. He just avoids so much contact. And I know for linebackers for many, many years, that was a slam. Like, he doesn't take on contact. No, he just skips it all together. And he's so fast and so quick that he can do it. And then, man, when he closes, it is instantaneous. You can use whatever adjective you want. Electric. It's just, there's a distance and then there's not. And he is on top of the quarterback or the running back. Really, really exciting player. And I think has a very good chance to continue the legacy of this award as being very predictive of NFL success if he lands in a good spot. Again, outside of injury or unforeseen circumstance, which we talked about with Reuben Foster, he's got every shot to be a very good pro in the NFL.
My thing with Jalen Walker is it's not just about fit, but it's also about role, and the role that he's going to play in whatever future defense that he's in. Right? I struggle to cast him as a full-time edge. Because if you look at his size profile, he's 6'2", 245. He's not the biggest guy. He's incredibly explosive. He's incredibly bendy. The effort is out of this world. But, going up against Kelvin Banks, that's an actual starting NFL tackle. He couldn't move him, right? He did get a sack in that game, but also it wasn't on Banks. Quinn was 11 yards deep in the pocket for no freaking reason. And Banks dispensed him into the ground and threw him into the ground. He just happened to throw him into Quinn because Quinn was way too deep. And then you saw Kelvin like raise his arms like, what the hell are you doing there, dude? Like, I'm trying to throw him behind the pocket. So he did get a sack in the Texas game, but it wasn't a clean win against an NFL starting tackle. And that's a theme that you notice with Jalen Walker is he'll win with speed, he'll win with bend, but I don't necessarily see a counterpunch, like a literal counterpunch in terms of being able to win through a tackle. And I would use him as a situational rusher on third down that can really contribute with that speed, especially on stunts and everything like that. But you mentioned his feet are so good and his hips are so good. I kind of want him in coverage, a little bit as well, because he can do all that Leonard Floyd stuff where Floyd was just as good going backwards as forwards, but he's a better athlete than Leonard Floyd. So use him like an Andrew Van Ginkel, use him like a Kyle Van Noy, a Leonard Floyd, an early career Von Miller where they played a 4-3 in Denver and they put him at Sam linebacker because he was athletic enough to drop. Like, do that with him because he is an edge that you can drop and not just have him be a warm body out there. Like, he can actually cover people. So I kind of put him and Abdul Carter in a very similar category. Both could be exceptional football players, very impactful at the next level, but they kind of got to be in the right role, which to me is that Sam linebacker role that goes backwards and forwards. If you just want him to be a weak side defensive end all day long, if he's going up against tackles with grown man strength, I don't know if he could do that yet. Put him at Sam, stand him up, make him play in space, because that to me is his superpower.
Yeah, if he's a wild card and you move him around, it's a little bit like the conversation we had around defensive backs. You need to have a sort of wider view of what he can do. If you are trying to pigeonhole him and put him in one particular spot and say you just need to do this, I think it's limiting because I don't want to say he's unlimited as an athlete, but he is damn close. He is a ferocious athlete. We're going to see that in testing for sure, but we've already seen it on film. We know it. So use that versatility, use that speed. I mean, I think about what like Brian Flores would do with him. Like put him on the inside and bring him as a late blitzer. He has so much speed and ability to sort of move through the line cleanly after the gaps have developed that he's just not going to give quarterbacks very much time and chance, but you're going to have to move him around to get those opportunities. And you should, because he can create them and he can do things that a lot of other players, like you said, physically just can't do.
Our next award would have been the Bednarik, but Travis Hunter won that. And I kind of want to do all the awards that Travis Hunter won at once. So we'll save that for the end. We'll do the Bednarik, Biletnikoff, and Heisman at the end. Moving on to the Rimington. And I don't want to say this one has a caveat, but it kind of does, right? Because if you're looking back at all the centers that won the Remington in the last 10 years, generally pretty predictive of success at the NFL. There's a couple, random busts here and there, generally pretty predictive. However, this year, the winner, Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State, tore his Achilles in November. So I don't know how this is going to go. Like, he might miss all of 2025. He might miss his entire rookie year. So he might not get drafted super high because of that. Even though this award is littered with first round picks like Ryan Kelly, Billy Price, who again, randomly busted. I was really high on Billy Price. I didn't see that one coming, but
I was waiting for that.
He didn't work out. Garrett Bradbury did, though. He was a first rounder. Tyler Linderbaum was a first rounder, and he's obviously worked out. Even Olu from Michigan, he's now the starting center in Seattle. JPJ won it. Landon Dickerson is now a guard, but he was one of those guys who could play all three spots in the interior. You'd feel good about it. Like, even Pat Elflein carved out a pretty decent career. So there's a lot of success on this list, but none of them tore their Achilles in November of their last season in college. So I really don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, and injuries notwithstanding for any of these awards, it's really rough, not only for Seth, but also for the center class. There is, I think, this is just me wish casting. I want to say there's a growing belief in the NFL about the importance of having a good center, just because I want the Bears to finally get on board with it. Right. But this center class is a little bit thinner. Seth was one of the very good ones, and him not being in this class or not being available as a large part of his rookie season is going to weaken that class. That is going to up demand. Of course, supply being even more limited is going to make those picks priority picks. You're going to have to go earlier than you might want to go if you want to get one of the top guys. As for the rest of the guys, Jackson Powers Johnson, we've seen him. He's not playing a ton of center. Olu didn't play a ton until this year when Seattle center retired, but Mike Mack has credited him with calming that offensive line down, which it desperately needed. We talked about the resurgence of their run game last week on this podcast. A lot of that has to do with Olu. I was super high on Olu. We just didn't see him play. And again, it's landing spot. He was behind veterans. He hadn't earned the starting role. Once he got a chance and got on the field, everybody went, oh yeah, he can really play. He's really good. Unfortunately, banged his knee up this week. We'll see whether that's, it's not season ending, but how long he'll be out with that, or if he misses any time, but a very, very good player. And look, centers traditionally as draft picks are pretty safe. Their hit rate is pretty high. And this award, like a lot of them, hit rate is looking really good in the last 5 years, especially. Tyler Linderbaum, Landon Dickerson, Tyler Biadasz, all those guys have played very well at a high level. And, kind of stands to reason that, centers are one of the safest picks statistically that you can take in the NFL draft. And the hit rate for the Rimington, which is their award, pretty high.
Next up, the Outland Trophy. This is for outstanding interior linemen, either offensive or defensive. And remember, interior linemen, due to outdated terminology, means anything inside the tight end. So it could be tackles, it could be guards, centers, DTs, edges, five techniques, like whatever. Like anything goes in this award, as long as it's inside the tight end. And because of that, you see a whole smattering of names that played different spots and had different career trajectories. So Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle who we mentioned from Texas earlier, won it this year. He's phenomenal. Last year it was T'Vondre Sweat. Still TBD on his career, but early returns are positive. Olu, we just talked about. He went in the 5th round. He's now a starting center in the NFL. And again, we'll kind of see how he works out long term, but early returns are doing okay. I don't think he's the problem in Seattle. I just think their guard play is atrocious. Jordan Davis won it in 2021. Solid starter. Hasn't turned out to be what we thought he was going to be so far, but he's not a negative on the defensive line. I would consider him a positive. Alex Leatherwood. Not enough words in the dictionary for Alex Leatherwood. That one didn't work out, and we kind of knew that at the time, and the Raiders still did it anyway. Penei Sewell, future Hall of Fame track that he's on right now, won in 2019. Quinnen Williams, he's going to be a multi-all-pro when it's all said and done, won it in 2018. Ed Oliver, solid starter for many years in Buffalo. Cam Robinson hasn't turned into what we thought, but he's still been in the league for almost a decade, so I'll consider that one a success as well. Joshua Garnett did not work out at all. And then Brandon Scherf, multi-Pro Bowler, several times over. At this point, had a long and fruitful career. So generally speaking, pretty strong correlation. And before we talk about Kelvin Banks Jr., I would say whether you're an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, if you win this award, probably going to be a good pro.
It's one of the most fun things to me about the Outland Trophy is that it is a bit of everything. It's just we want a good player and they have to play on the line. That's pretty much it. Most of these awards are more specialized than that, and I think that makes this one, if anything, a little bit more fun. T'Vondre Sweat had a great fumble recovery, but we knew he was going to wreck shop with Jeff Simmons in Tennessee, and he has been so far. Olu, we talked about. Jordan Davis is interesting. We all thought he was going to be an overwhelming force on the interior defensive line when he hit the NFL, and he has been solid, but he hasn't been the, star across the sky that we thought he might be. Leatherwood, you mentioned. Penei Sewell, one of the most athletic tackles, one of the most athletic players in the NFL, period. You see him on a weekly basis do stuff, and you go back and you go, did he just do that? And you're like, oh yeah, it's Penei. But you just, that's the caveat. Oh yeah, it's Penei. Most other tackles couldn't do that. Quinnen Williams, we've sung his praises many times on this show. Ed Oliver, I think, is getting better with age. He had some sort of up and down, highlighty type seasons early in Buffalo, but also he was getting run over in the run game. We talked about how their interior defensive line was not great against the run. As he gets older and more savvy, I think he is a better player and makes more impact plays with more regularity. So that's a great way to watch a player age in the NFL. Definitely doesn't happen that way all the time. So his career's been fun. Cam Robinson, just got traded and again is still playing at a fairly high level. So when you're talking about success, regardless of the fact that it's not an offensive or defensive focused award, for the most part over the life of this award in the last 10 years, they've picked really good players. And I think they picked another one this year in Kelvin Banks Jr. When I went back to his tape, I had forgotten. The Jonathan Brooks tape is basically just Kelvin Banks, propaganda. Every time they needed a run, they ran behind him, and Brooks would aim right for wherever Banks's butt was because he knew it wasn't going to be there when he got there, that Banks was going to move his guy out of the frame, and he did it over and over and over again. He is a very large human being, not surprising for an offensive tackle. He is extremely powerful. I don't want to say he's not light on his feet because, man, if you watch him move, he's athletic as well. But he does it in his own way, but it's incredibly effective. This is a plug-and-play tackle. I could see him playing left or right in the NFL, but the power is there, the ability to move people, angle play, quickness, the ability to negate defender's hand usage. Now, again, he might not do that in the most traditional ways, but is he really effective at it? He is. This is a very worthy player, and I would be surprised if we didn't add him to the list of NFL successes, 3 or 4 years down the road.
I have a lot of thoughts on Kelvin Banks Jr. And again, I'm only 2 games into it. These are early draft season thoughts on Banks, but I watched the Georgia game first because I was like, okay, that's the best competition of the year. And I came away extraordinarily enthusiastic about that tape. The 2 sacks that he quote unquote gave up, again, I mentioned the one against Walker. That was more on Quinn Ewers just having negative pocket presence, which is kind of Quinn's downfall. And then the other one, again, he's winning the rep and then Quinn steps up and the guy just retraces and, gets the sack off. So it wasn't his fault either time. And if you're watching every other pass pro rep in that game, he was dominating. He picked up every single stunt. You couldn't cave him in. So the left side of the pocket was always great. The right side was having a whale of a time against Georgia. But you watch him in that Georgia game, and people kept saying that was his worst game. And I'm like, no, that's a top 10 pick right there. Because he stared down Jalen Walker and just grabbed him and said, you're not going anywhere until, of course, he threw him into Quinn by accident. I think he's really damn good. If I put him into last year's tackle class that had Fuaga, that had Fa'atanu, that had Olu, Mims, I think the only one that absolutely for sure with a bullet would have gone ahead of him was Alt. But I think you could have talked me into him over Fuaga. You could have talked me into him over Olu, over Fa'atanu. Over Mims, especially because there's just a lot more snaps on tape than Amarius Mims, even though Mims is more physically gifted. He is so consistent. He is so powerful. He's got length. He's a team leader. I mean, for God's sakes, he's engaged with a kid on the way. This dude's been a grown man since he was 19 years old. He is truly the definition of a plug and play pro's pro. It makes no sense he's a true junior because he plays like he's 25. He acts like he's 25 or 30. I don't have any problems with him. He's one of the few prospects in this class where I don't have any issues with him. Just take him. You're getting a good football player. Does he have the ceiling of Joe Alt? No, but also 5 tackles ever have the ceiling of Joe Alt. If you just want a good, solid starting left tackle in the NFL for the next X number of years, you take Kelvin Banks. If the Bears had him on the board and they passed, I would fire everybody that day because he's exactly what they need.
He's a great player. You are going to have to take him very early. When it's all said and done, he will go in the top half, probably in the top third of the first round, because he is going to be among the first names selected whenever we get down to, we have a little bit of a need at tackle and we cannot afford to miss on this draft pick. We absolutely need a blue chipper. Like, Kelvin Banks is going to be one of the probably 2 cards they're looking at, and they're going to go, yep, that's the safest one. We know we can just drop him in our line. He's going to do the thing. We're probably not going to even have to give him a lot of help as a rookie, and that is rare regardless of where guys get drafted. Banks is the kind of guy, physically, mentally, technique-wise, you're not going to have to chip great pass rushers against him after the first, well, maybe not even after, like, summer practices. Like, he's that dude. He's been that dude for a while. He's incredibly consistent. He has all the tools. It isn't like, oh, he's a great player technically and mentally, but he's just not, big enough, long enough, strong enough. Nope. He's all those things. So he's going to be an incredibly safe looking pick, again, with all the reps he has on tape at Texas, both in the pass game and the run game. Some teams are just going to run the card up there.
All right, next award, the Mackey Award for Most Outstanding Tight End. I'll be honest, considering how hard it is to find good tight ends in the draft, I didn't have high expectations for this one. And we had Hawkeyes, by the way, shout out to Hawkeyes. He was the one who pulled all this data for us to get it ready in time for the show. Really came in clutch for us. But when he was pulling the 10 years worth of award winners, I was like, there's no way this one's going to have a correlation. Like, it's so hard to find tight end. I'll be damned. It correlates pretty well. Like, Tyler Warren won it this year, and we'll get to Warren. Brock Bowers won it the previous 2 years, and he's currently on pace to have one of the greatest receiving seasons for any tight end ever. He's not super big, but by God, he can catch a football. Trey McBride, who I think it was EJ's tight end 1 the year he came out, won it in 2021. He's amazing. And even though he catches 1 billion passes and got a ton of yards, he still somehow doesn't have a touchdown this year, but that's not his fault. So I'm not going to hold that against him. Kyle Pitts, fantasy football enemy number 1. Kyle Pitts won this award and had a great rookie year. And then we never heard from him again. So that's frustrating, but we know the talent is in there. Harrison Bryant won it in 2019. You and I were pretty high on Harrison Bryant. He went in the 4th round, and it hasn't turned into what we thought he could be, but he was pretty darn good in college. TJ Hawkinson has been a multi-time Pro Bowler since he won it in 2018. Mark Andrews, multi Pro Bowler since he won it in 2017. Jake Butt won it in 2016. Excuse me. Unfortunately, he got injured, so I don't really know what his career would have panned out like if he didn't get injured, but he did. So, unfortunately, that it is what it is. Hunter Henry won it in 2015. Had a pretty nice long career as a solid starter. And then you have a wild Nick O'Leary appearance in 2014 when he was on that loaded Florida State team and they were just winning every single award. So overall, in 10 years, if you take out Nick O'Leary and unfortunately a Jake Butt career that got derailed by injury, pretty much all of these hit, which is a pretty good sign for Tyler Warren, if I had to say anything about it.
Yeah, it's really comes down to me. Harrison Bryant is, again, he's still in the league, solid player, hasn't been tremendous. And if you are going to win, the nation's award as the top player at a position, you would have maybe expected more. Doesn't mean he's, making it in the NFL at all is a very good achievement. He hasn't hit the heights of these other players, but outside of Jake Butt, who, had a very serious knee injury, and then Nick O'Leary a full decade ago, this is a really solid list. And like you said, with Kyle Pitts, situation changed. We saw his production change a little bit. We know the talent is in there, but you're talking about Mark Andrews, Hawkinson, Trey McBride, who has been, had a breakout season last year. Again, when his situation changed, his rookie year wasn't so great, but last year was sort of a revelation and then continued that success this year. Brock Bowers. And then you get to this year's winner, Tyler Warren, who plays for Penn State, is very big. In fact, he's so big for a tight end that I think you almost mistake how athletic he is because his levers are really long and it doesn't look like he's doing all these little chatter steps. He doesn't look super quick or fast, but you see him outrunning people, and he's incredibly athletic with the ball in his hands. I would say a throwback tough guy as a tight end, loves to run people over. They use him as a wildcat quarterback, and he's had plenty of big runs that require running through people. He has the ability at his size to just jump over the line and extend the football, reminiscent of some very great running backs who've come through the league. And you then think, oh my God, he's not like 5'10 or 5'11. He's well over 6 foot and just a really good player. I feel sorry for the college teams that forgot about him because they run this little chip leak wheel route like over and over again. If you look
7-Eleven, baby, always open.
If you look at his highlight tape, like a large percentage of his highlights are off that route. And you even hear announcers later in the season going, I don't know how they let him get open on that. That's his route. That's the route they run every week and kill everybody with. And they still did. Great at catching the football, can high point it. I think he's got a very, very bright future because he is so versatile. He's big, he's strong, he's tough. He's not terribly shifty. He's got a good first move, but he's not a jitterbug, just again, because of his size, but he'll run through you. He'll jump over you and moss you if he has to. You can use him on jet sweeps, but it's not, everybody thinks about jet sweeps and they think about speed. It's like jet sweep power, if that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's Tyler Warren's play. So that's Tyler Warren's music. I think we're going to be hearing it a lot when he hits the NFL.
How many 6'6", 260 tight ends play Wildcat quarterback?
Not the way he does.
Not the way
again,
he does. Like
he brings an athleticism to that is belies his size. You look at that size profile and you go, he can't do those things. And then he goes out and does those things. And you're like, okay, this is legit.
But it's not just the fact that he plays Wildcat quarterback and like, you know, he's got a crazy vertical. So they'll use him as a goal line running back and he'll just kind of do like the LT leap over everybody into the end zone because he jumps super high. He's got like Mike Gesicki hops, but he's just better than Mike Gesicki. But it's not just that. It's the fact that when they have him in the Wildcat and like he gets out on the edge, he runs away from people. Like when he starts striding out, you're like, oh shit. Like he has legit like run away from you speed. And he's kind of a weird guy to comp. Because in some ways he reminds me of like a Zach Ertz, right? Like a big body seam ripper. In some ways he reminds me of like an Evan Ingram in terms of, you know, his speed after the catch or even just in the backfield, or like a Trey McBride. Like you can give him a jet sweep, like with Trey McBride, he's going to get the edge on you. You know, he has the contested catch ability of, you know, a typical 6'6", 260 tight end is going to go posterize people. But he also just has this remarkable toughness and willingness to not just get hit over the middle, but be the one that hits people over the middle. And I was on the sidelines for that Penn State USC game. So I was literally right there, feet away from him, watching him play. And on that day, and I was thinking it was like October, like mid-October, on that day when he dominated. Hold on. Let me look at the exact stat line for that game. So I pulled it up here. 17 catches, 224, and a touchdown. On that day, I had a thought sneak into the back of my head, which was, is my grade on him going to be as high, or dare I say higher, than Brock Bowers? Because he has a lot of the receiving chops of Brock Bowers, but he's 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier. Like, I would not besmirch anybody for grading him higher as a prospect than Brock Bowers. And I don't mean that he's going to walk into the NFL and catch 100 balls for 1,300 yards like Bowers is, because Bowers is in a very unique situation where they are feeding him because they have to. And obviously he's a very capable receiver, more than capable receiver. So I'm not saying he's going to go out there and have the greatest rookie receiving tight ends, season ever. What I am saying is that he's 6'6", 260 with 88 catches for over 1,000 yards, damn near 1,300 total yards and 10 touchdowns. Like, that is a rare profile. Extraordinarily rare profile. It's the Bowers receiving profile, but bigger. So yeah, he's a first rounder. I don't think that's a question. The question is, how high in the first round is he going to go? Because I think it might be pretty damn high.
A team's going to be able to use him however they want to. And I think his usage cone or area of influence is even bigger than Bowers because he's bigger than Bowers. He runs like Brock Bowers once he gets the ball in his hand, but he does it a different way. He is more aggressive. You mentioned the USC game. He went hunting in that game. Like all those catches, all those receiving yards, he was still looking for little safeties to just plow over. And Bowers will spin away from them. He's a tough guy. He'll spin through tackles and run away from tackles. I think his speed, his quickness might be a little bit better. I think he can accelerate at a smaller frame profile, just a tick faster. The top end speed's very similar, and Warren will run through you. Again, he's got a good first step to make the first guy miss. And then once he gets going, he's really looking for contact that he can win. Bowers is always looking to get away from it, and he has so many moves that we've seen him just extend, yards after the catch in many, many ways. So they have a similar effect. They go about it in different ways, but I could see them being similarly effective, which is really high praise given what Bowers is putting up in his rookie season.
One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com, and if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show, and with that, let's get back to it. All right, next up, Doak Walker. This is, unsurprisingly, the award that has one of the highest correlations between being really, really good in college and really, really good in the NFL, because NFL running backs tend to be pretty darn good right out of college. Like, I feel like the first 5 years is typically the prime for a lot of running backs, because that is a position that gets beat up and gets beat up quick. So if you're a Doak winner in college, you're going to go to the NFL probably with a fairly high pick, usually within the first couple rounds, and then you are going to get carries. Mostly. There's some guys on this list where that doesn't apply to, but generally speaking, if you're looking at Bijan Robinson, he's a multi-Pro Bowl track. Obviously, Bijan's great. Kenneth Walker, if Seattle could, fix their interior offensive line, in particular their guard issues, he could probably be a multi-Pro Bowl track, but for now, we'll just call him a solid starter because he's making chicken salad out of chicken shit up there. Najee Harris, he's been all right. I wouldn't say he's turned into what we hoped for him, but he's been fine in Pittsburgh. Jonathan Taylor, multi-all-pro track. He won it twice in back-to-back years. Bryce Love, he never really... he was a fourth-round pick. Nobody really thought that he profiled like an elite NFL runner, and he ended up not becoming an elite NFL runner, so that one's not super surprising. But he was very productive in college, which is why he won it. Deontay Foreman has really turned into a pretty valuable role player in the NFL throughout his long career in the league. Close to 8 or 9 years, I want to say, in the NFL at this point, and he's been productive at several spots. Derrick Henry, obviously the king, future first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest running backs of all time. He won it back in 2015, and the year before him was Melvin Gordon, who made a few Pro Bowls in his day. So again, strong correlation with this award. And what's interesting about this award is we have 2 winners in the same draft class. Ashton Genty and Ollie Gordon are both likely, probably coming out this year, and they are the last 2 winners of it. So, EJ, my question to you is, Ollie Gordon, Ashton Jeanty, what are the odds that both of them work out in the NFL?
I think they're pretty good. Ollie Gordon is a really interesting case. He's one of those guys that would have been served better coming out last year. And he had a great season. His team fortune declined. Oklahoma State definitely had a dip this year. Famously had them renegotiating with their coach, possibly looking at moving on. And Ollie Gordon suffered from that. He had a tremendous year last year when he won it. I think a very good prospect. Ashton Jeanty, we're going to talk about a lot because he is historically significant at the running back position. I'll just say that. You want to be very careful with comps because you're comping him in a stratosphere to guys that were all pros, multi-time all pros, Hall of Famers. That's the air he's in terms of his amount of production. And sometimes if a guy came from a smaller school, you could say, oh, well, that's because, and many of these awards, as you go back more than a decade, that happened fairly often. With Boise State, some of Jeanty's best production came against the best competition. He did great against Oregon. Oregon's got a bunch of dudes on the defensive line that are getting drafted. They're the same guys he's going to see in the NFL. So that argument doesn't really hold up with him, and he's an exceptional player. We'll be talking. He's going to get a lot of ink from us and everybody else during this draft season. I do have to lodge my official objection to any rating system that puts Kenneth Walker and Najee Harris in the same class.
And I know, I really thought about putting Kenneth Walker on like multi-Pro Bowl track, but it's like he hasn't made one yet, and I'm really projecting that.
Okay, future Pro Bowl track,
future Pro Bowl like I'm not putting my faith in John Schneider to fix the interior offensive line. Like he and Ryan Poles are like peas in a pod. He doesn't care. Like he just doesn't give a shit about it. And so I'm not. How about this? If Kenneth Walker does like a Saquon type thing where he goes to a team that has a really good offensive line, we're going to see what Kenneth Walker actually is, which is a phenomenal running back.
100%.
Until that day.
Right. You're withholding judgment.
Fun stat, by the way, that I looked up this week. If you're looking at yards before contact per carry through the A gap and B gap, hold on. Let me get the exact numbers here because I tweeted it out.
Yeah, because it's abysmal.
It's horrible in Seattle. So it's 0.6 yards average yards before contact per carry on runs to the A or B gaps this season. So again, interior offensive line here is what we're talking about. Seahawks are dead last in the NFL, 32nd, 0.6 yards. Eagles are first at 2.7. So if you run inside the tackles in Philly, Saquon on average is not getting touched for 2.7 yards. Not even getting touched. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's no wonder he's putting up insane numbers and is an MVP candidate because he gets the longest runway in the NFL. If you give Kenneth Walker half of that, he'd probably be pretty darn productive too. So yes, I understand your complaint.
Okay, as long as it's officially lodged, because if you took Kenneth Walker and just transported him magically to the Chargers right now.
But at the same time, Najee's made a Pro Bowl and he hasn't. So it's like, I have to figure this out.
And this is not anti-Najee Harris. Najee Harris has been a very solid starter. I think that is a perfect label for him. He's done a lot. He's had to work through some not great offensive lines in front of him as well. So this is not Najee Harris slander. This is Kenneth Walker is an absolute star at running back. We got to get him a line at some point. He's now that Terry McLaurin's gotten good quarterback play in the NFL, Kenneth Walker getting good offensive line play is my next, but he's really good if he could get a little support guy moving forward until that happens for him. Overall, really good hit list for the Doak Walker Awards. Bryce Love never was the same after the injury. I know he did come back from it, but he just never really escaped it. He was lightning in a bottle before that in his college career. everybody hoped that he could continue that in the NFL. He's just one of those guys. Again, as you said, running backs get dinged up once they get to the NFL, and largely before that now with a lot of mileage in college. And he just never recovered from that. Other than that, every player on this list has been at least a solid starter, if not much better than that.
One note on Ollie Gordon, by the way, because I'm not sure if we're going to get a shot to really talk about him as much as we want to during draft season. I know we're going to talk a lot about Genty. So I want to take the moment to talk about Gordon. He is a fascinating running back prospect to me because he's kind of built like a sawed-off Derrick Henry. Like, he's not as big as Henry, but he's proportioned the same way. Like, he's kind of like a high-cut, long-legged, like one cut and go type running back. And I know we always have this running bit of like, oh, who's the mid-round Shanahan back in this year's class? It's probably Ollie Gordon, right? Because like when he gets up to speed and he's really striding out, like you're not catching him. Mm-hmm. He's got really good feet for how, leggy? Is that a word? Like he's really leggy, but he's got really good feet for it. Like if you put him into like a really outside zone heavy scheme that will use his speed to his advantage, use his kind of one cut ability to his advantage. Also, he's got a wicked stiff arm. Like he's got really long arms as well for his size. He's just like a spider out there. Like not a big torso, super long legs, super long arms. Like you can't get a good angle on him. Like he's got that. Again, I have to be really careful with comps. It's not a Derrick Henry stiff arm, which might be the best stiff arm ever, but it's really darn effective. And you just can't get a good shot on him. So if you're looking at his 2023, I think he's coming out as a true junior. I can't remember if he's redshirt or not. But if you look at his 2023, where he had like 21 touchdowns and 1,700 yards, look at how many of those runs somebody had an angle on him and then didn't have an angle on him. Like this is a very, very talented one cut back. You put him in any system that prioritizes those kinds of runs, ironically, including Pittsburgh, he'd be really darn good, in my opinion.
I think he's got a great future. We saw all that potential last year, and it didn't go away. It's not one of those things where there was a situation with a player, injury or otherwise, where his capacity got reduced. It was the team coming down around him. Doesn't mean he can't do what he did last season. He absolutely can. And again, just like all players, if the fit is right and the usage is correct, we could see him be an absolute comet as a rookie.
All right, next award, the Davey O'Brien National Quarterback Award. It's interesting how there's kind of a difference in college between, best player and best quarterback. I really want the NFL to do that too, because somebody other than a quarterback should win MVP at some point. Like it's really hard for somebody who isn't a quarterback to win it in the NFL. So I like that college has that. Like if you're the best quarterback, you win the Davey O'Brien. If you're the best player, you win the Heisman. Maybe one day the NFL will figure that out. Either way, this year it was Cam Ward. If you're looking at the overall hit rate of people who won the Davey O'Brien versus did they work out in the NFL, kind of a mixed bag, which is what you expect from quarterback evals in general. But the one that really sticks out to me the most is Max Duggan. Like, how did Max Duggan win this award in 2022? Like, that is insane to me. It's everybody on this list is a first round pick, and Cam Ward will be a first round pick. And then you just randomly have a 7th round Max Duggan in there. Wild.
I think the Max Duggan pick is the throwback to the college award voters going, this is about the best college quarterback, not about the best pro prospect. Because Max Duggan had a tremendous year that year. He was never going
for college.
Right. He was never going to be a high round NFL pick. Like there were a lot of people that wanted him to be. My mentions were full of them. But if you watch his tape, you're like, a lot of this isn't necessarily translatable to the NFL, which is the art and science of the NFL draft. So that I feel like was the voters sort of throwback to, but he was just the best quarterback in college. And that's what this is about. So we're going to do it. Other than that, given the volatility of the quarterback position and scouting it and looking for successes in the NFL, I actually expected this to be way worse. I expected this to have a lot more variance than that, because you basically have to go back 10 years to Marcus Mariota at 2014. And Marcus Mariota is still in the league and starting games. That is 3 times the average NFL career. So that's a success in its own right. To even get sort of average in terms of their overall effectiveness for their career, you got to go all the way back to 2014. We can talk about Deshaun Watson, but coming out as a college quarterback and as a rookie in the NFL, and for a few years after that, he was a very successful quarterback. It's hard not to say that he wasn't a very good NFL quarterback. Obviously, that's not the case now. His career has really fallen off the cliff. Baker Mayfield playing well in his, fifth stop, playing extremely well, leading the Bucs team right now. Kyler Murray has shown life with Jonathan Gannon arriving in the desert and being surrounded with a bunch of weapons. That offense has hit some highs this year. The consistency might not be there. Burrow goes without saying. Mac Jones. The Mac Jones pick is looking worse by the week. If you watch the game,
can I just chalk
Sunday,
that one up to 2020 COVID season, right? Because if you're looking at the quarterback class in the draft, in that draft year, like literally the only one that worked out in the first round was Trevor Lawrence, because everybody just knew that Trevor Lawrence was good. Every other first round quarterback completely flopped. So let's just call that COVID year shenanigans.
I'm fully on board with that, because quarterback classes that go into the NFL, quarterback draft classes coming out of college, go into the NFL. Like every 5 or 6 years, there's a class where 5 or 6 guys work out, or maybe it's like 8 or 9 years. And every, in an alternating every 8 or 9 years, but in about a 5-year spot, there's a quarterback class that everybody looks back and goes, "Oh my God, do we have to pick any of these guys?" None of them worked. So yeah, Mac Jones, that's the bust on this list. Duggan, I just don't think he was ever destined to be an NFL quarterback. So it's almost like, yeah, you get the award because you're the best college quarterback, but it's not translatable. And that's one of the places where these lists differ wildly. But if you're looking at Jaden Daniels, Bryce Young, again, situation matters. It's a fascinating case study with Bryce Young, because his first couple of years, year and a half, was terrible. Absolutely rugged. As of late, the back half of this season, he showed why he was a first round pick, the capacity he has to be a very good NFL starter, I would say, an above average NFL starter. He's done some great things. And it's really cool to see one guy have that in one place. Usually, like Baker, you have to not work out or work out in a certain way and leave and sort of do the journeyman thing. Sam Darnold's another one that was picked very high that needed a couple of stops before it worked out for him. Again, situation matters. It's very rare. And again, the situation changed around Bryce Young. He didn't have to leave. Everybody else left, and he got a new coach and a new GM, and things are looking up for him in Carolina. But Cam Ward, very interesting quarterback. We were looking forward to seeing him last year at Shrine Bowl before he decided he was going to transfer from Washington State and to play one more year at Miami. I'd say good choice for him. He wins this award. He is going to be a first-round pick. Got to showcase even more of his talents to an even wider audience. Certainly more people watch Miami football games than Washington State football games. And a lot of talent. Is he a surefire hit? I don't think anybody is a surefire hit as an NFL quarterback. Does he have the ability to be? He does. He's got things to work on too, but the potential is there. And if you look down this list, the chances are, I would say, actually better than average, better than your average NFL draft pick, that if you win the Davey O'Brien, you're going to have a decent or above average NFL career.
I want to throw some stats on screen for Cam Ward, and we'll just kind of take the screenshot of this and put it up on screen. These are part of those numbers that Ed Hockey's put together for all of our kind of quarterback contextual data, right? And these are on true dropbacks, right? So we took out screens, we took out RPOs, we took out play action, and just showing true dropbacks with adjusted completion percentage, yards per attempt, rating, TD to interception ratio, big time throw rate, turnover worthy play rate, sacks taken, and then time to throw average. And we did full field target areas. We did in between the numbers, outside the numbers at varying depths, whether it was behind the line of scrimmage, 1 to 10, 10 to 19, 20 plus. All of the colors that you see on screen are relative to the 2023 quarterback numbers among FBS quarterbacks in the same categories, right? If you're blue, you were top 10 in the FBS in 2023. Now, why did we use 2023 instead of 2024? Because that's the class that had Caleb and Drake May and Bo Nix and, all of these first round quarterbacks that were at the top of the FBS. I wanted to see how his numbers in 2024 compared to those guys that we know generally are working at the NFL level right now. That's a lot of blue there. Like, that is top 10. That is in those guys' stratosphere. And green is top 25, which is also very good. If you think about all the FBS quarterbacks, there's a couple hundred of them that have qualifying numbers of attempts. So if you're top 10 in a lot of numbers there that matter, TD to interception ratio, big time throw rate, rating, yards per attempt, adjusted completion percentage, like especially on like tough throws, 20 plus yards down the field. This is a very, very impressive statistical profile with pretty much the only warts being time to throw, because he does hold on to the ball quite a bit as he's running around doing Cam Ward stuff, and situationally turnover worthy play rate. Like, there are some spots where he has a kind of an unacceptable turnover worthy play rate. Other than that, though, this is a really, really impressive profile. So if you package this with just watching film and seeing Cam Ward do Cam Ward stuff, you're like, oh my God, this is sick. And then also be like, and he won the Davey O'Brien, which, over the last decade has a decent correlation. Again, I'm not saying that just because he won the award, he's going to work out. But if you also package it with just having eyeballs and looking at the stats, I feel pretty good about it. Not going to lie.
Especially in this quarterback class. We're going to talk about the dearth of talent in this quarterback class. And I feel like as we go through the draft process, as we do every year, and people's, warts get highlighted and very bright lights get shown on some less than favorable statistics that people go and dig up, Cam Ward's going to be one of those players that kind of rises by staying in the same spot, which, as you've outlined, is incredibly solid statistically and on film. I feel like some folks are going to drop away. Some folks already have. We saw Drew Aller go back to school this year or commit to go back to school next year. So he's not going to be in this class. And the attrition is going to sort of fall away. And I feel like Cam Ward is going to be standing there going, yep, I would have actually been a half decent pick last year. What do you got versus me this year? And for quarterback needy teams, the answer is going to be not very much. There's going to be one or two players, and in some ways, they're not going to compare very favorably when people start diving deep. And people will absolutely start diving deep because picking a franchise quarterback in the NFL is one of the highest leverage decisions in all of sports.
All right, final trio of awards, and we're doing all these together because the same guy won all of them. And this sounds like an impossible list to sweep, but Travis Hunter did it. He won the Bednarik, which is Defensive Player of the Year. He won the Biletnikoff, which is Most Outstanding Receiver. And, of course, he won the Heisman, which is just top player in college football. I want to start with the Bednarik because this list is also littered with very good NFL players on the defensive side of the ball. Going back to about a decade ago, it kind of feels like it was more who's the best in college, and then starting around mid 2010s, they're like, who's the best in college that's also really good for as far as like NFL profiles go. But 10 years ago, like Scooby Wright won it, and he was a 7th round pick. Tyler Matakevich won it. He was a 7th round pick. Did end up being a pretty good special teamer though and role player. But he was never projected to be like a top line, like NFL linebacker. He was just ultra productive for a rough and tumble Temple defense that gave a lot of people fits. Then Jonathan Allen won it in 2016. Everybody kind of knew that he was going to be a really good pro, and shocker, he's a really good pro. Minka, again, is on a potential future Hall of Fame level track as a safety in Pittsburgh. He won it in 2017. Josh Hines Allen won it in 2018. He's turned into one of the best edges in the NFL. Chase Young won it in 2019. He got drafted super high. Unfortunately, injuries have, I don't want to say derailed. Well, I kind of do want to say derailed. It derailed him from where we thought he would be, which is, a top 5 to 6 edge rusher in the NFL. He just hasn't turned into that for multiple reasons. Zaven Collins, he's moved around different positions, but turned into a solid starter at edge. Jordan Davis, mentioned him, turned into a solid starter for the Eagles. Hasn't lived up to what we thought, but he's still good, I would say. Will Anderson, oh baby, he's hit. He's kind of turned into what we thought Chase Young was going to be. And then the last two are still TBD with Peyton Wilson and, of course, Travis Hunter.
Travis is amazing. We're going to talk a lot about him. This is the beginning. This is the kickoff of our Travis Hunter coverage on Bootleg. You said it seems like an impossible collection of awards to win, and it really is. There shouldn't be a guy that can do it. Travis Hunter did it, and he deserved it. And that's what I want to start off with. He is a wild athlete. He is an extremely gifted, talented, rare athlete, all the adjectives. And he is also a tremendously good football player. He understands what to do with all those gifts, which are exceptional. His quickness, his ability to cut, his speed, again, looks like Pop Warner tape, where there's one kid that's really, really good and you just get him the ball all the time. Except he's playing D1 football. It shouldn't be that big of a difference. It is. He's just that much quicker, that much faster. And in terms of playing receiver and defensive back, these two things play off of each other. They give him an understanding, football-wise. We call it football intelligence, FBI, right? Gives him an FBI that works for him in both ways. As a defensive back, he understands how the wide receiver is running that. And as a wide receiver, he understands what the defensive back is trying to do to him and how to set him up more effectively. So it's just like almost perfect synergy of athletic ability, football understanding, and this convergence of being able to work you on either side of the ball with everything he brings to bear. And that's why he won all these awards. He is very, very talented. We have seen talented players play two ways in college, not as much as Travis. He has way more snaps on both sides than almost anybody does. I mean, we saw it even last year with Sione Vaki, right? But there was still the question of when you get to the NFL, okay, it's the NFL. You can't possibly play that way. The physical attrition's too high. You got to pick. Which one are you better at? It's a legitimate question with Travis. Like, usually you have an answer to that question. And I'm probably going to have to break my own rule, which is I have to pick because the NFL picks. I don't know that you have to pick with him. He is that kind of rare. He could be a legitimate boon to either side of the ball in the NFL, and potentially both. Now, that's so attractive on one side. This is a two sides of a coin thing. On one side, so attractive to have one guy fill two roster spots extremely well at a very high level. And he has the potential to do that, the true potential to do that. The flip side of that coin is if he gets injured, you also just lost wide receiver 2 and cornerback 1.
Exactly.
So you gotta, all of a sudden your roster kind of needs to expand if he gets dinged up. He's tough. He's instinctive. Again, great football understanding and just so quick and fast. He has both. There's a difference. He is both. And at a level that is hard to quantify, like how much better he is than all the other very quick and very fast guys. But you see it on tape. He separates pretty much instantly as a wide receiver. He undercuts routes regularly as a defensive back. He's got good hands, better hands than an average defensive back. So you see the interception numbers there. But just the quick twitch and the mental side to be able to trigger all those physical gifts. Very, very rare football player and deserving, therefore, of all these awards, because I don't think we're going to see another one like him for a long time.
Before I get to the history of the Biletnikoff, because he also won the Biletnikoff for best receiver, I want to expand on what you said about durability and like what happens if he gets injured and he's a starting receiver and a starting corner, then you lose both, right? The thing that I don't think people are really factoring in here, beyond just, hey, NFL playbooks are really complicated, it's going to be tough for him to learn both at the same time as a rookie. Beyond that, look at how many games you have to play in the NFL. Colorado's 9-3. They played 12 games. And he was still kind of dinged up a little bit just in a 12-game schedule. 12 games was like a month ago in the NFL. They're about to go to an 18-game season, plus 4 playoff games on top of that. So you could potentially play 22 games in a season. That is almost double what Travis Hunter just did. And he already got dinged up a little bit. He played through it because he's a warrior. You can't ask a human being to do that. Like, you just can't. And I know he wants to. I know he's going to ask to do it. But the coach needs to sit him down and say, like, okay, you're playing against grown men that are 30 years old, that are bigger, stronger, and faster than anybody you've ever hit in your life. And you got to do it for 6 more regular season games. It's a 50% longer season. You're just playing one spot, dude. Like, okay, we'll bring you in as a role player on offense. We'll have a package of like 10 to 15 snaps or 10 to 15 plays that you'll get in on as like a wide receiver 3 because you have amazing ball skills, and we'll see if we can take a shot to you and let you go win. But in no universe, in a season that is 50% longer than anything you've ever done in your life before we even get to the postseason, in no universe are you going to play both ways as a starter like you did in college. That is wildly irresponsible from like a medical perspective. Like, you can't ask a human body to endure that. So as much as he wants to do it, I just don't think there's any way.
It's like burning a candle at both ends, and NFL careers are short enough as it is with physical attrition. We see every week how many guys are injured, whether it's season long, whether it's going to be, them out for a month and rehabbing like crazy just to get back. Like, we already see that. And some of the hits are absolute car wrecks, and you can't always avoid it. I don't care how skilled you are. And he hits as a defensive back. Like, Travis Hunter has the EJ seal of approval as a defensive back that hits. Mm-hmm. And again, that all adds up. If you weren't, A, I would like you less, but B, it would give you a little bit more physical mileage that you could then, quote unquote, spend on offense if you wanted to. He's not like that. He is all go all the time in both ways. He will jump up and is incredibly physical at the catch point as a wide receiver too. He's not making business decisions there either. And his body's going to make decisions if he keeps up that play style with the increased workload. I just don't see a physical way around it. It's not about how tough you are. It's about how much punishment a body can take.
Now, let's say his future team does make him pick. There is a financial element to this as well, right? Which is if he picks receiver, he might make a shitload more money than if he picks corner. Because top of the receiver market's like $35 million at this point. Top of the corner market, I can't remember what the exact number is, but it's a hell of a lot less than that. So let's say he picks receiver,
sure, as
the reigning Biletnikoff winner. Looking at the Biletnikoff list over the last 10 years, other than kind of, again, a weird mid-2010s stretch where it feels like college football was trying to figure itself out, there's a pretty strong correlation here between winning the Biletnikoff and having success. I want to say we only have up to 2014 on this chart, but I want to say in 2013, even 1 year before this, I think it was Brandon Cooks that won it that year too. And everybody was like, Brandon Cooks from Oregon State, he won it? Well, Brandon Cooks is still playing. So I would say even going back that far, it's a pretty strong correlation.
I feel like it's a tale of two lists or two halves in this particular list. And what you said holds true, especially for the, I would say, 2015 to 2018 stretch. 2015, Corey Coleman didn't work out. D.D. Westbrook also didn't work out. 2017 is James Washington. I would say decent player, but not at all what anybody expected him to be. And Jerry Jeudy up to his resurgence in Cleveland, which again is another sort of chip on the table of situation matters. He's looked amazing over the last month with Jameis starting. Before that, he looked like a bust. So we can now say solid starter, and I feel really good about that. But that sort of 15 to 18 range is where this award didn't strongly correlate, I would say. But starting in 2019, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt, I'm just going to chalk that up to Daniel Jones. I'm just going to say Daniel Jones. Like, we don't know if Jalen Hyatt's good or not. He may well have one of those career arcs.
What if they draft Cam Ward and he's still bad?
then we can say it didn't work out. But until then, I feel like Jalen Hyatt's career arc looks a lot like Jerry Jeudy's career arc, and we've seen Jerry Jeudy's take a massive upswing in a different situation.
I don't know if I would have called Jeudy a bust. I think I would have just said, oh, he's a role player. And then he got to Cleveland and became solid starter. Bust, I think, would have been like Corey Coleman, like out of the league in 3 years, right? Yeah. So, but either way, I think you can literally see on this list when voters started realizing like, oh, Big 12 numbers are fake. And they just started looking at SEC and ACC.
Yeah, and then after Jalen Hyatt, it goes Marvin Harrison, and then, of course, this year, Travis Hunter. So I would say the correlation in the last 5 years is probably good to very good, depending on, maybe Jalen Hyatt's career takes a turn once he is either with a better quarterback or in a different organization where he's used a little bit better, because he has a lot of talent. We haven't seen it yet on the NFL field, and that's the case for lots of players. But, Travis Hunter winning this award is not just some publicity stunt. I'm telling you right now, if you look at his capabilities as a wide receiver, and he would probably be wise financially to choose wide receiver if they're going to give him a choice, because his talent is exceptional. Again, he's a very good route runner. He is physical at the catch point. He has long speed. He will run away from you. He's physical as a blocker. He's not super effective because of his size, but it's not for lack of trying. And he has enough juice to be, very much like a guy that's on this list from 2021. I think he can be a much better version of Jordan Addison, and Jordan Addison's been good.
So last award here that Travis Hunter also won, the Heisman Trophy. This one's kind of interesting because the last 4, but really last 3, because Travis just won it. But the last 3 Heisman winners that are in the NFL are all very young. Like they all came into the NFL at close to the same time, because you had a couple guys that won it as sophomores in Bryce Young and Caleb Williams. So it's TBD, TBD, and TBD for the last 3 winners prior to Travis Hunter, because some of them are either A, rookies, or B, have just finally found themselves halfway through their second season, like Bryce Young. But before that, if you're looking at all the Heisman winners going back to Marcus in 2014, Marcus Mariota, that is, pretty much all of them hit. And even then, Mariota's played for, as you said, triple the average NFL career. So I would even consider that a hit as well, because he didn't completely flame out immediately. He's still around. He just didn't turn into what we thought he was going to be. But every other Heisman winner, Devonta Smith, multi-Pro Bowl track, Joe Burrow, potential future MVP, multi-All-Pro track, been to a Super Bowl. Kyler Murray has made a couple Pro Bowls and probably will make a couple more, if not several more. Baker Mayfield, probably about to make his second Pro Bowl this year. And, if things worked out in Cleveland, he probably would have already made a couple more. Lamar, future likely first ballot Hall of Famer. In fact, he probably already is a first ballot Hall of Famer if you're looking at everything that he's accomplished up to this point. Derrick Henry, again, future Hall of Famer. And then, of course, you have Mariota in 2014. So you have Pro Bowlers, All-Pros, and Hall of Famers, and then a bunch of young quarterbacks that we haven't quite figured out yet. That's a pretty strong correlation.
Yeah, all the way back for a decade now, the Heisman has a very strong correlation. And look, if you can choose literally any player in college football, you're probably going to get it right. But there was definitely a period, late 90s, early 2000s, where Heisman winning did not correlate to NFL success. That's definitely cleaned up over the last decade. And again, I say cleaned up. The Heisman's point is not to point out who's going to be the best pro. It has started to align that way because, again, I think the two games have come much closer together over the last decade, and we see that in the results. It's not that Heisman voters set out to say, oh, we can't pick somebody that's going to flame out in the NFL. They just said, hey, the best college player now translates much more directly to the NFL, and we see hit after hit after hit going down this list. And, that's really good. It's great for guys to be able to say with confidence, unlike being on a Madden cover for the most part, hey, I won this award. It doesn't mean I'm automatically going to suck in the NFL, which, there was a joke about the Heisman, again, about 20 years ago. But if you look at the last decade, you can't make that joke anymore. It's outdated.
We have a long way to go until the NFL draft, obviously, but hopefully shows like this one kind of keep giving you guys context for the strength of this class. You know, quarterback, not what we're used to. Receiver, not what we're used to. But there's still a lot of good players in this class to be had. And we have a bunch more to talk about. Not just the stars, not just the award winners, but also, you know, the mid-round gems, the down-the-board guys that are going to be special team stars for 8 or 9 years. Like, we have a lot of names to go over between now and late April. So hopefully you guys enjoy all this draft content as we kind of ease you into draft season, you know, because there's 20 fan bases that are kind of checked out at this point. So these shows are for you. We also want to thank all of our executive producers for Bootleg Football on the Bootleg Football Patreon: Fitzy, Andrew, Connor, Eichen, Liam, and Mike. Thank you all once again for supporting us. Thank you to Underdog. Thank you to our clothing partner, Homage, which I'm wearing an Homage hoodie right now because they have their holiday collection out now. They also just got sweats in. They got beanies in. So whatever you want to get, whether it's the holiday collection, your favorite NFL team, your favorite college team, bootleg gear, like we have dedicated bootleg gear as well on Homage, whatever you guys happen to get, even if it's not our stuff, we get a direct cut of the proceeds if you use our link below. So thank you in advance for that. EJ, any final words and or plugs?
Rolling towards the holidays, not that far away. Go get your Homage gear. Keep your friends and family warm and comfy. And we are already planning for all the content we're going to bring you. It's going to be even bigger and better this year. That's our goal every year, and I think we're going to hit it this year. So pretty excited about it. This feels like a very solid kickoff, but lots more to come.
All right. With that, we'll see you guys next show.